When the big day finally arrived, it came with all the glam. I even had a driver by the door, ready to take me to my internship. We passed by Vandross's and Danny's, and as soon as this last one boarded, we were told what our next stop would be. The internship site. Towards the end of the trip, when the hospital finally showed up at the horizon with all its infrastructural majesty, and I nearly had a stroke from all the joy that sight was giving me, the driver guy just swerved to the left and got out of that path. Asking him about the possibility of, perhaps due to his mildly advanced age, the possibility of him making a mistake, the driver finally revealed that the internship would not be at the city's and every aspiring doctor's dreams hospital after all, but rather, it'd be at an old asylum we'd never even heard of before. I could feel the director's anguish when I called him asking for answers, threatening to destroy his life of carnality with the evidence he very well knew I had. However, in the end, I chose to save that evidence for another time. It seemed to me, from the impending cry and the director's voice, that things really didn't go as planned. After that call, the driver asked us if we intended to continue that trip. I considered what I thought was the most important thing to me at that moment, the know-how I'd acquire from that experience, and the certificate that came along with it. And this is how I made the worst decision of my life. In fact, that's how I made the first one of an endless sequence of horrible decisions. Only God knows how I didn't end up with my life even more devastated. But so it was written. And so we resumed our life-changing journey, never to look back. After several turns, we finally arrived. I'd never seen before a place so close that was so difficult to get to. If, by any chance, I was left alone to walk by myself, I'm pretty sure I'd be lost for the rest of my life. Less than 6 kilometers from home. The internship location was beyond our expectations. Yes, beyond our worst ones. It was nothing short of a Dracula's castle on steroids. Which is a place I'd be marveled to visit one day. However, I think it's not cool to be on your way to your internship, and then, all of a sudden, hey! You're on Dracula's castle. You know what I mean? That was totally not it, initially. That wasn't it. Such big surprises and who knows what kinds of heart conditions people do have. There's a thing humanity came up with to try to avoid such imminent tragedies. What's it called? I guess it's, simple communication? Which, if not used for that, I really don't know why it exists at all. But back to the subject. Besides the fact that place looked like Dracula's castle on steroids, if it wasn't for us screaming and yelling out there, they'd probably never even open the door. This strange guy finally steps out and all he had to do was smile a little crooked and say he was responsible for the ghost-infested looking place in the middle of nowhere, for the driver guy to carefreely turn his back on us and walk away, like it was all good. No wonder it felt like marching through hell when I entered that place. In addition to being extremely hot and kinda stuffy. It felt like a dead end, from which, even if I managed escaping physically, I would definitely remain there spiritually, trapped for the rest of my days. Old Thompson, a sort of butler of that place, whose looks and attire had an eerie energy to it, was kind enough to show us every corner of the asylum. From the sprawling back garden full of dismal-looking ceramic statues, and the colossal dining room decorated with portraits of the place's former owners, all the way to the electric chair rooms and solitary confinements. And despite all these visual elements, the story behind them managed to be more terrifying than that place already seemed. Old Thompson. This is Elizabeth Cross, the last owner of this palace, before it was turned a monastery, a convent, abandoned convent, and finally turned into this asylum. Old Thompson said, pointing to an old portrait of a well-fed, long-nosed woman dressed in opulent robes. Old Thompson. She was the wealthiest of the lineage, as well as the last. Poor thing. At one moment she became deranged, as a result of a prolonged poisoning orchestrated by her own husband. Me. Heaven's sake. I commiserated, with real pain in heart. Me. I've seen people close to me go nuts so suddenly that I can tell. Nothing terrifies me more than losing my mind. Old Thompson. Well, worse than losing your mind is getting it chopped off. Literally. And that's exactly what happened to her husband, when Madame Cross went mad enough to decapitate him and serve his brains and guts to their own children. On this very table. Old Thompson evidenced the terror in his words with loud thuds on the table. Me. Lord. Danny. See, I'm not even that desperate. Danny planned to leave the asylum at once. Me. Danny. Chances are those stories aren't even true. Danny. And what do I do? Stick around to find out? Old Thompson. None of the children took the house, believing this place had been taken over by demons. A dozen exorcists tried to purge the house, but to no avail, as they still abandoned it anyway. Danny. Strange asylum in the middle of nowhere. Demons, murders, poisonings, mutilations, exorcisms. Michael. How the hell did I get here? Me. Danny, calm down. Vandross. Rich kids and their problems. That's all. Vandross downplayed the situation. Vandross. If it was me, I'd rather share the bed with the devil in my misery. Danny. What a terrible thing to say, Vandross. I'm done getting goosebumps. Here. Thank you very much. Vandross. What do you know about goosebumps, boy? Real goosebumps? Goosebumps you get sleeping in the freezing winter streets 'cause you're homeless. Goosebumps you could make a penny from, scraping grease off pots with them, 'cause you're starving. And you didn't even eat in these pots, 'cause who's to sympathize with a no home, no love, no mama, no daddy having kid in this world? How can I sympathize with the fictional demons people fear when I was dealing with real ones and the things they made me do every day? Me. But this people almost ate their father's brains and guts. Vandross. It's just kind of hard to chew, but they'd be fine. We only noticed Danny's absence when the door slammed in the back room. Old Thompson. Moving on. Even his bizarreness, Old Thompson seemed to shudder at Vandross's claims. Old Thompson. In 1818, the church acquired this house and turned it into a monastery, in hopes of purifying this place once and for all. Only to have dead friars hanging on these very chandeliers. We followed Old Thompson with suspicious footsteps to the other compartments of the asylum. He dramatically pointed his finger to one of the many chandeliers in a particularly exquisite room we were in, and we could see traces of rope left on it, with an old story to tell. Me. Nothing better than keeping all these memories alive, isn't it? I commented, extremely disturbed by the vision. Me. Lord knows what got the friars hanging so high up there. Vandross. Yeah. These chandeliers are unreachable. Old Thompson. I noticed the what instead of who in your statement, which makes it an interesting one. Me. Oh? I really didn't mean. Old Thompson. Not to worry, son. Not yet. Before I could digest the words and the grim expression on Mr. Thompson, we go out into the garden. As if the statues with agonizing faces weren't terrifying enough, old Thompson continued the historical accounts of that place as we walked through the garden, by the beautiful stream marking its limit. Old Thompson. There are compartments in this place that have never been opened since the mid-19th century. In the few existing records about the time this place was a madhouse, it's stated that some of the solitaries in the basement housed 3 of the hospice's most notorious lunatics, who ended up here for killing and drinking the blood of 400 people. Vandross. Bloodsuckers, you mean? Real-life vampires? Old Thompson. So it seems. And there's no certainty to how their story ends. But there are 2 sad endings. The first and the second tell of a try to save their souls through the holy baptism. However, did they even have a soul in the first place? What's known is that the sacrament was to no avail. After failed attempts in victimizing some of the madhouse's staff, the 3 of them were locked in their cells, left for starvation to deal with them. Me. How tragic. Old Thompson. The second account though, tells a different story. The 3 baptized men showed improvements after the sacrament, and gained the staff's trust. Then. It's not really told how that happened, but sunny day on this garden would be the staff's last after a blood-sucking attempt didn't actually fail. The 3 lunatics influenced the other patients to suck blood, and make use of the chaos to escape the asylum. All the other patients left. As for the 3 lunatics, bathed in the blood of their victims, they got into this very stream, probably to wash themselves in it, but only to be preyed on by the little beasts that inhabit it. The piranhas. I turned my head slowly and looked once more at the one thing in all that mess that seemed peaceful. If it wasn't for Mr. Thompson, we'd probably find out about this part of the family, through their fangs deep in our flesh. Old Thompson. Now you know the kind of place you chose to get an internship in. Me. Actually, we. Vandross. And I can't believe how a place like this can be so unknown. Vandross tried to hide the shock that horror exhibition had caused him. Vandross. This is like Disney with the kids running about, laughing hysterically. Just not necessarily in physical form. Old Thompson. Well, then. I'd think of this place as peculiar, to say the least. Vandross. Peculiar or whatever it is, do not worry, Mr. Thompson. And forget what I said. Michael and I don't believe in superstitions. I looked both ways, searching for whatever Michael that guy was talking about. Vandross. We live and breathe science. Yet, believe me when I say that your stories are very interesting to us. Vandro put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed it in a way I interpreted as an obligation to follow his lead. In response, I drew the fakest smile ever on my face, with the contradicting sadness etched to it. Old Thompson. Some would say, fear the living. For the dead, what harm can they ever do? Me. I wouldn't say that in a place like this. In my last try to speak the truth of my mind, Vandross looked at me as if he could burn me alive with his eyes. Me. But anyways. Vandross. Yeah, anyways. Old Thompson. Anyways. Our God Almighty answered the prayers after all. For decades now, this has been the most peaceful place on earth. See, Some people looking for a calm and pleasant place to work on would have been here. They made lots of money selling lumber and chips and took none of their machinery when they moved. Who knows, maybe in the hopes of coming back one day. Me. Hum. Thank God, Mr. Thompson. Hallelujah. Now, what really brought us here in the first place? Old Thompson. Oh. Please, forgive me. Let's get back inside. There's some people that would love to meet you. And finally he introduced us to the Greybeards. As old Thompson gave us the last tips on how to deal with the health needs and complications of each of the seniors, the door that led to the front door of the asylum was opened and, after a timid request for entrance, inside came the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. Going by the name Belle, she told us that she was an intern on that program. Besides a whole lot of other things I couldn't pay attention on, for I couldn't stop noticing how she just embodied temptation, which a mind of its own. Gorgeous. Dark-skinned and brown-eyed goddess, hair fluttering in air, her short white coat showed her long legs on heels, her perfect round breasts, gently touching each other, were sensually and shyly shown. Pure human architecture. And there's so much more to her that words can't say. She was truly a beauty. After a long journey in that landscape, I returned in time to hear old Thompson say that Mr. Francis could be put the freezer. That the elderly would sometimes show atypical behavior. And that he would be gone for a few hours but would return to the asylum shortly after the 3rd clack in the morning. Then he drew on his face the most Machiavellian smile I'd ever seen, before vanishing in the night. Pretending I'd heard everything he said, I waved goodbye in an enthusiastic way, and as I closed the asylum door, my eyes expressed the joy of somebody who had just found a gorgeous reason to stay.